I'm like this with the podcast. I've done a lot of episodes now, but I still every time can't
I could
find
never ever find it,
the
ever.
button. Right, here we go. So it's 12, so I'll start letting people in. Okay, thank you.
It's all right.
Okay, welcome, welcome. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first webinar, lunchtime webinar of Neurodivergent Birth Awareness Week. I'm very excited that you're here joining us, and I'm particularly excited to introduce Frankie to you, which I'll do in just one second. I'm going to be keeping an eye on the waiting room as people pop in, and also the chat box. We are going to be presenting this webinar style. So if you do have any questions for Frankie during her presentation, please just pop them in the chat and I will help keep track of those. And we'll have opportunity at the end for a short Q&A session. And we're also recording these sessions so that we'll have a resource available for people to watch after Awareness Week, and that will be available on our YouTube site, which is new and evolving. So bear with me and thank you. But yeah, thank you so much for your support in general of Neurodivergent Birth Awareness Week. If you haven't had a chance to already, please do head to the website and get yourself one of these. It's a resource pack that is crammed full of information about supporting neurodivergent experiences perinatally. We touch on the 4 support pillars of neurodivergent birth, which are sensory processing, communication, executive functioning, and mental health. And there's lots of amazing discussion prompts in there so that people can have conversations in the workplace, with colleagues, with family, and more about these topics. So please do get a copy of that if you haven't done already. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce Dr. Frankie Harrison. Frankie is a clinical psychologist and has recorded a really, really important module for our antenatal course for neurodivergent parents to be. And that's all about talking about what to expect from the NICU if your baby has to spend some time on the neonatal unit and how to support yourself as a neurodivergent person. So I'll hand over to Frankie. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and very honoured to do the kind of kicking off of today. So thank you very much for having me. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about neonatal care, what to expect in neonatal care, and then how to support yourself as a neurodivergent person. So I'll be talking to the experience of being within neonatal care as a neurodivergent parent, but I'll also be talking about how we can support neurodivergent parents too. So we're going to talk about what we need to kind of prepare for, what to expect if your baby needs neonatal care, and then exploring how neurodivergent parents might experience NICU differently. I'm going to share some practical tools and strategies across those 4 support pillars that Victoria just spoke about to help you feel more confident, to help you feel more regulated within it too. And then I'm going to talk to you about how we can support yourself with advocating your needs as well. So, a little bit about me. So, I am a clinical psychologist. I qualified in 2016, and in 2019, I became pregnant and unexpectedly developed preeclampsia, and my baby was born at 31 weeks. So, I had 5 weeks in neonatal care, and whilst I was there, I realised that there was very limited support. It has got better since that point. But at that point, there was very limited support available. And what I found was that so many people just weren't talking about the impact of neonatal care on everything: identity, relationships, mental health, emotions, all of those things. And I saw that there was a gap. So I started Miracle Moon, which is social media, just on Instagram, talking about some of those thoughts, feelings that people might be experiencing. And it's kind of snowballed since that point. So we now run a company and we've just developed a community interest company as part of Miracle Moon as well. So we're growing and trying to do more things to support parents too. I co-founded it with Georgie, who's a graphic designer, and we started with that support at Miracle Moon. We now support people one-to-one with therapy. We specialize in EMDR, trauma. We have online resources, and we collaborate with loads of different organizations as well. We're both neurodivergent, so we are full of ideas and creativity. And we bounce around all the time with loads of different stuff. But yeah, it's kind of increased my awareness of going through the neonatal care as a neurodivergent person. So we know that neurodivergent parents might experience NICU differently, and their needs are often unseen or unsupported. So we need to be talking about NICU because around 1 in 7 babies spend time in the NICU, and it's often seen as this niche thing, but actually 1 in 7 is fairly huge, I think. And for most people, it's often unexpected, and that can be a shock and that can be stress. So knowing what to expect, I find helps reduce overwhelm, especially if you're neurodivergent. I think that there is this element of feeling like we want to know the information, we want to find out a little bit more about these kind of things to feel a bit more prepared. You may not ever feel like you're completely prepared for it, but just having some information might help too. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the environment of being in neonatal care. So when you walk in, there are machines and there are wires. Your baby will be kind of hooked up to various different monitors. They will have, they'll be monitoring their breathing, their oxygen levels. It might look intimidating, but they are there to keep your baby safe. And I feel like those wires can look overwhelming at first, but staff are there to show you how to hold your baby and care for your baby around those wires too. You'll see incubators and you'll see cots. So babies that are born early or unwell stay in an incubator, which is like a clear box with controlled temperature and humidity. And then babies who are bigger or more stable may be in a heated cot. There will be lights, there will be alarms. So the NICUs are fairly brightly lit. And the babies sometimes have like a blanket over them so that it's darker and more womb-like within their incubator. Most of the alarms are not emergencies. It's the machine picking up on movement or a wire coming loose, but it's a fairly consistent sound that's there. And staff usually are aware what alarms matter and they will react to it. Staff are in and out all day, nurses, doctors, consultants, therapists, cleaners, students, and staffs work in shifts too. So you meet lots of different people. And that can feel a little bit unsettling, but it always means that your baby is being looked after and cared for. You've got a chance to speak to the team at least once a day at ward round, where they gather around to discuss your baby's care. And it's really important to know that you are the most important member of the team looking after your baby. In terms of accommodation or going home, some places may have hospital accommodation or space for you to sleep, but a lot of spaces don't. So you may be close to home, you may be further away, but it depends on your local hospital and the capacity that they have for you, your baby's needs as well. So you may need to be transferred to a different hospital, you may need to travel home, there may be some distance there. And it's just about talking to your team about what support they've got in place for you to be able to make that as manageable as possible. So the team who are looking after your baby, you've got the nurses who will be at the cot side throughout the day, and then you've got doctors and consultants. They deal with medical decisions and ward rounds. We'll have different therapists, so physio, speech, occupational therapists, feeding. Clinical psychologists are often on the wards now, more often than not. So there may be psychological support there or a counsellor to talk to if you're struggling. There may be support workers around, so people who can volunteer on the unit and be a helping hand or emotional support, healthcare assistants, support class staff and cleaners, and then you guys as the parents and the most important people there in your baby's world. So most of the team come together at ward round to discuss your baby's care at least once a day. I'll talk a little bit more about that and how we can make that helpful for you, because that can be something that feels a little bit overwhelming. I know I found it overwhelming. So let's talk a little bit about what we can do as parents, right? Because often it feels like we can do very little in that situation, but there's actually a lot that we can do. So even if your baby is tiny or in an incubator, you can often place your hands gently on them and do what they call hand hugs or containment holding. You put your hand on their head, put your hand on their body, and just kind of hold them still. So you can do that. You may also do skin to skin, which they call kangaroo care, and it's okay to do that as well. And there's so many benefits to being able to do this. Feeding wise, it might look different, but you can express milk. You can help with tube feeds. So they may have being fed by a tube down through a nasal gastric tube. Or if your baby is ready, start breastfeeding or bottle feeding. Care tasks, changing nappies, taking temperature, cuddles, cleaning your babies. The nurses will be there to guide you through what you can do to take care of your baby in NICU. And it may look different to what you expected it to, but there are so many ways that you can look after your baby in the NICU. So that kind of skin to skin, one of the things that I just want to kind of talk on a little bit here, it's really, really important to talk about how healing and how beneficial that is for baby and for you as well. Sometimes it can be quite overwhelming. Sometimes it can be quite tricky. We're going to talk a little bit about the sensory part of this too. But that in itself is one of the most kind of healing things that you can do for both of you. But even if you can't do that skin to skin, being present, sitting by your baby's cot or incubator is so much of what matters if you're able to be there. Your baby knows your voice, they know your touch, they know your smell. Bonding might look different to how you imagined this to be, but it is very, very possible within the neonatal unit. It's really normal for this to feel overwhelming, but being present when you can, even just thinking about your baby when you're not there, talking to them, reading to them, using bonding squares, which is where you have like a little a piece of fabric that you swap between you so you can exchange smells, touching, feeding, caring, all of those things help. So a little bit more on that skin to skin. So the World Health Organization talk about needing that skin to skin as early and as safely as possible. So some UK units still wait until babies are stable. So their oxygen, maybe their lines are secure, but once possible, staff will try to help to safely put that baby on your chest. If they're saying not yet, you can always ask when it will be or wonder what needs to change before we can start doing that. But in the meantime, hand hugging, your voice, your smell, all still incredibly powerful. One of the things that might feel tricky is that things might feel like they're out of your control, right? So medical needs often come first. You may be asked to leave during procedures, but you can ask to cluster care around your baby's breast. You can, there's things around kind of feeding and thinking about what's your choice between how you feed, pumping, breast milk, formula, all those things are your choice. Some other things that may be out of your control are staying all night. So some NICUs, most NICUs are 24/7 hours access. Others, they might have quiet hours. You can ask about rules around things like sibling visits, about parent accommodation as well. But they may talk to you about going home and what that might look like too. Other things like medical thresholds, infection rules will all be set by the unit. But your influence is about your involvement in cares, your feeding choices, how information is shared, and how you look after yourself. And it's really important to think about there's so many things that feel like they're out of my control, but what is within my control within this environment? So, for example, advocating in action, we know that we go into this kind of people pleasing mode, especially when we're in a hospital, especially when the power dynamics feel like they're off. When we're with medical professionals, it's really, really normal to go into that people pleasing bit. But it's okay to know that you can advocate, you can ask questions. So you might say things like, World Health Organization recommends that early skin to skin. How can we do that safely here? Or can you cluster care so that my baby gets more rest? Do you practice family integrated care here? How does that work? So what that means is how I can be a part of the cares a little bit more, how I can support my baby a little bit more. Are there any rules about how long I can stay, the options for the night so that I can plan ahead? Let them know how you best process information if it's written down to help you summarize the plan. It might be that you tell them that you need 5 minutes before we decide, can we pause? You might be communicating to them that you find the noises overwhelming. Can I have some headphones? Or when they're doing a procedure or checking on the baby, tell me what you're doing, tell me what you're looking for. You know yourself best, and it's about advocating for your needs. So maybe having a think about that beforehand. So we're going to talk a little bit about the emotions that come up. So there is a plethora of emotions that come up, and they all tend to come up at once. You don't just experience one feeling at a time. So we might experience this kind of shock of like, this isn't how it was supposed to be. We may feel this fear about how your baby is and how well they are. We might feel a guilt of whether, did I cause this in some kind of way? We might feel this numbness or this dissociation, kind of feeling disconnected from yourself or others, of the world. That was probably the biggest one for me. We might feel this jealousy or this resentment. And then often underneath those kind of feelings is this grief, right? This loss that feels like it's there. We might feel this anger, like this isn't fair. We may feel sadness, we may feel grief, and then we may do this survival mode. So feeling like we want to run away. It's not about wanting to run away from the baby, it's about wanting to run away from the situation. We might kind of go into that kind of fight mode as well of feeling tense. We might feel that kind of shut down or people pleasing, like we've spoken about before. And all of these things, completely normal and completely valid. So let's talk about the kind of extra layers if you're neurodivergent. We also have things like the sensory element to it. The alarms, the light, the heat, the smells, and all of that can feel more overwhelming. Communication, it can feel like there's more jargon there, fast ward rounds, lots of people there. Our executive functioning, so disruptive sleep, we know how much that has an impact. It might feel like there's endless tasks or a bit of an admin overload because you're learning how to do different things that you've never done before. Being perceived as well. So it may feel like there's lots of people around you. It might feel like you're being watched or like you're being assessed in some kinds of way, and that can feel really hard too. And then emotional regulation. So our emotions may feel really heightened or we may feel really frozen, and we just find that we get pulled in between all of it as well. We might also find the rules hard. So particularly if we're transferred between different units, different staff, different units may have different rules, and that may be really hard to adjust to and figure out what it is that actually we need to do. So that's something that comes up a lot in the therapy room. Social interactions, so anxiety around talking to other parents or professionals, that might be high. Being around a lot of other people a lot of the time can also feel really tricky. That control element we've spoken about before as well, that can feel really hard to feel like we're out of control. And we also, on the flip side, may also find a routine and we may find comfort in that too. Mental health wise, 80% of parents say that they struggle with their mental health after NICU. So parents with a premature baby are 50% more likely to experience psychological distress than those who don't spend time on the unit. So we know that mental health is something that is so incredibly important during and after the neonatal unit. And we often see that there is a kind of a delayed processing, and especially for neurodivergent parents, that you might get to the point where you're 9, 12 months down the line. And at that point, then you go, oh my goodness, what is it that I've been through? And it kind of hits you at that point. It might not, but it's being aware that there may be some experiences of a kind of delayed processing that is there too. But we also really need to talk about the strengths of being a neurodivergent parent. We can spot the detail. We can notice subtle changes in our baby. We're really good at hyper focusing. So learning the routines, the monitoring, the medical language, all of that. We're good at advocating, asking key questions. The routine, like we've said, sometimes we can feel soothed by that routine, that monitoring. Once we've learned it, it can feel actually quite safe within the unit. We're good at creative problem solving, and we have a deep empathy and a connection too. So let's talk a little bit about those four support pillars that we talked about earlier. So, sensory processing. So, the alarms sometimes can put people into panic mode, right? Because that's what they're kind of designed to do. They're designed to get a reaction out of you, a kind of visceral reaction within you, right? So, it's really important to talk to the staff and go, what is it an emergency and what is just a noise, and be aware of it. So alarms can kind of trigger that startle response. It can be overwhelming, that bright lighting, eye strain, headaches, the smells of the antiseptic, milk, plastic, wires, PPE, hand washing, all of that. We can get like a tactile discomfort with that as well. We may be able to less likely use movement to regulate as well. So, like holding your baby skin to skin, you're still for quite a long period of time. It might be that you've had a C-section, so you're unable to kind of move as much as well. So that can feel tricky. Pumping and feeding and the impact of that on your sensory system as well. We can sometimes find that that is quite overstimulating and overwhelming as well. Holding your baby, it's lovely, but it's also tricky sometimes as well, having to be still for that long period of time and that kind of sensory experience of having your baby on you for such long periods of time. You might feel a little bit overstimulated, and temperature wise as well, it's very hot in the units. So finding that overwhelming too can be tricky. So what can we do about that? By being aware of the fact that that is happening within the unit, we can start to accommodate for ourselves. So we can have noise cancelling headphones. We can have a calming playlist that we have on. We could even wear like sunglasses or a cap or tinted lenses if we're finding the overwhelm with the lighting. We can take fidgets with us or stim tools or grounding objects in your pocket. So, for example, I had a conker that I just kind of held and just kind of, it was a really grounding thing for me to just have that in my pocket. Stepping outside for short breaks and just kind of taking a real deep breath, comforting food and drink. I think I made my way through about 40 packets of chocolate fingers while I was there. And I always made sure that I had like a flask of tea or something warm that felt like it was soothing too. If we can't move so much, so if we're doing the skin to skin, one of the things that we can do is just that kind of like gentle, like neck moving, shoulder dropping, progressive muscle relaxation. So that's where we're kind of like tensing one body part at a time and letting go. That can kind of give us that like sensory kind of release. We're using our muscles, but we're not really using our muscles. We could bring in a weighted blanket. We could make sure that we're wearing soft clothing or clothing from home, getting people to bring them in. We can use soothing scents. We could use essential oils or maybe hand creams if the unit is okay with you doing that. We can ask for a screen if that's available, or we can use our iPad, or we can read, all of those kinds of things to try and make the space around your baby and around that cot something that is soothing for you too, right? So it's about kind of making sure that you're being aware of what your sensory needs are too, maybe having a fan there, cool layers, like ice cold water, all those kinds of things. And it is completely okay to advocate for your own sensory needs too, because all what that does is it brings down the level of intensity that is generally around. So moving on to the next pillar. So thinking about the communication challenges. Kind of spoken a little bit about that medical jargon, the ward rounds, feeling fast or crowded or be unsure who people are. We might get mixed messages from different staff. We might get this fear of speaking them up or feeling like we've misunderstood them or they've misunderstood us. We might not feel heard. We might find it difficult to kind of process at the speed that they're giving us information. And also just generally other parents around us as well. That can be really, really tricky. So, a couple of things that we might do around that. So, we might write questions down before ward rounds, keep a journal, use voice notes or voice recording if they let you do that so that you can take that information in and listen to it at another time. If they're using too much jargon, you can ask for plain language explanations. So, can you explain that to me as if I was 10 years old? You can ask for that, right? You can request the written notes so that you can look at them. You can request summaries so that you can process it in a visual way if that's how you process as well. You can have a support person with you and you can wait until they're on the ward to be able to do the ward round too. So you can say, can you come back to me when my person is here? That's completely okay. It's also important to socialize as much as feels okay and go at your own pace. You can talk to the people who are around you. You can develop friendships on the ward. That is okay. But equally, if you don't feel like doing that, there is no pressure to do that. That kind of advocacy part, so being able to tell people how you process information better. So if it's written down, audio, whatever it is. So the next part is thinking about that executive functioning part. So care tasks, logging what to do, when to do, remembering what to do, all of that was so hard for me when I was kind of physically unwell and experiencing that sensory overload. So just kind of validating that along with the sleep disruption, like memory struggles, all of that, everything just slows down. And then you're trying to do things like multiple tasks all at once. So pumping, sterilizing, feeding, caring, admin, your own medication. The staff are there, but like there is a lot to juggle and it's all completely new. And at the beginning, it feels like it's not particularly predictable. There's not really a routine at the start. There's a lot of uncertainty. So until that kind of kicks in, it can all feel a little bit up in the air and a bit unsure. And what we often see with people is that they then go into that kind of freeze response when there's that overload there. And it's just like, I can't do this. This is too much. And then you just kind of feel a little bit disconnected there. So that processing of the emotions and that information may be delayed. So it also might the kind of bit about flexibility there as well. So finding that there is a right and a wrong way to do things when other people do it differently. That was another thing that I found really, really tricky. So I'd have one member of staff who would come in and tell me that I was allowed to do something in a certain way, and then another member of staff saying that I wasn't allowed to do it in a certain way. And I found that really hard to figure out what it is that I was allowed to do and when. But stepping back and knowing now, I know that there are things, if I went back into it, that I'd be able to do differently. And I'd be able to say, that person told me to do it differently and be able to kind of advocate for myself now. But when you're in it, that's tricky. So you might do things like using alarms or checklists or having a diary or a note on your phone. I think the single biggest thing that the majority of people say is write things down, whether you're neurodivergent or not. Just having a little bit of a note of stuff helps your brain, getting it out of your brain onto paper, taking that pressure off of your memory and just having it as something that feels like it's written down, whether you're writing about how you feel, whether you write about what's going on throughout the day, the ward rounds, the amount of milk your baby's had, or all those kinds of things. Writing stuff down can be really, really helpful. Breaking tasks into simple steps, keeping micro routines. So maybe it's things like eating the same snack or going the same route or having the same pump times, but having that kind of like predictability can really, really help too. Delegate admin tasks to as many people as possible. So ask people to help at home, get them to do your washing, get them to cook for you, try and do as little as you can outside of a unit as possible. People want to help, and we often feel like we're a burden for asking for it, but people want to know what to do. We've got a list on my website of like printed out, this is what you can do to help me, because when people message you and say, what can I do for help? Let me know if I can do anything to help. We're often like, I don't know what you can do. So we've got that list so that we can kind of go, there you go, pick one. There's a whole bunch of stuff that people can do to help. You might want to ask staff to repeat reminders as well, so that because memory can be something that's really tricky, huh? And then mental health wise. So, like we've said, the NICU is linked to higher rates of anxiety, depression, trauma, and kind of generally in that kind of postnatal period. And then neurodivergent parents may be at even a higher risk because of that sensory overload and the disrupted routines and that kind of constant social communication. And that can just push the nervous system into being in survival mode more quickly. And it's really important to know that's not about being weak. It's about the environment being incredibly intense. But it's also not there to scare you. It's to say that there is support there and there are things that we can do to be able to help you with that. So being able to kind of validate this for ourselves is one of the most important things. Being able to go, we're not being dramatic, we're not overreacting to this. Being able to say to ourselves, yeah, we might be experiencing more sharply things like fear or grief or guilt or overwhelm. We may experience that shutdown or that masking or that burnout. We have that experience of mental health struggles being more common, and it's really understandable. So the more that we're able to validate that in ourselves, not beat ourselves up for feeling that, and be able to get the support earlier, it helps. So I'm just going to talk you through a couple of things that might be helpful in terms of mental health strategies as well. So grounding, generally, our brain often goes to that worst case scenario. It's all uncertain. It all feels completely out of our control. And just doing that bit of coming right back to the here and now can be something that's really important. I've spoken about doing this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 bit, which is where you think about what you can see, hear, touch, taste, and smell as a way of being able to come back to the present. If you are on the unit, sometimes that can feel a little bit overwhelming, taking in more of the unit. So having something like a soothe kit, so this image here, could be a way of doing grounding without necessarily having to take in your environment even more, because that can be a lot. So having things within that are tactile things that you can touch, things that you can eat or taste, things that you can fidget with, things that feel soothing to hold, cold to hold, all of those kinds of things to smell, kind of go through your senses and think about things that kind of help you bring yourself back down, ground yourself, soothe yourself too. I've spoken a little bit about breathing here. So again, if that feels good for you to do kind of deeper breathing, sometimes it's less helpful to follow someone else telling you how to breathe and actually just doing that bit of going, how can I just breathe myself a little bit deeper? Just become a little bit more aware of my breath if that feels okay. For some people that feels a little bit panicky if we focus on our breath a little bit too much. But you can do things like we've got a free resource for people in NICU now, which is thinking about a safe space. So a place that is safe for you and imagining being in that space for yourself. So kind of walking through it, imagining everything that you can see there, touch there, taste, smell there, really immerse yourself in that place that feels safe. One of the things that I do with people is EMDR, and we use that technique as a way of kind of calming down when our nervous system feels like it's kind of up there and overwhelmed. And I'm putting my hands like this because we use a kind of slow butterfly hug and that kind of bilateral stimulation, that slow bilateral stimulation at the same time as doing breathing or grounding or thinking about a safe space can just bring us down in terms of overwhelm as well. You can bring in activities that you like doing, knitting, drawing, reading, anything that you feel like is beneficial for you to do alongside it. You don't just have to sit there and stare at your baby for the whole time. You can do stuff that feels soothing for yourself too. You can ask your unit if they have therapy or if they can refer you. You can connect with peer groups. We have got on the NICU space, we've got a membership where if you're finding it hard to be on the unit and socialize with people, you can come and do it on the internet, on your phone. And I know that I find that more comfortable rather than doing that face to face sometimes too. And just having those moments of self-compassion, what we would say to someone else. My feelings make sense. You know, it's thinking about what we would tell another parent in those same situations. And I know we're really good at dishing out the compassion, a little bit more tricky to do it for ourselves. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about that leaving the NICU, because this is the bit for me. So quite often we kind of think that we're out of the NICU, so we should kind of be over it as soon as we're out of the NICU. But for so many people, like we've said, that processing can feel like it's delayed. It is ongoing. We have an ongoing impact on things like our identity or our relationships, or there might be a physical impact. For our babies as well, there may be repeated hospital admissions, ongoing medical issues, or uncertainty about our babies as well. We may feel It may feel tricky that then we don't feel like we're medical professionals and we're not kind of trained in how to deal with our baby in a medical way. But it's really, really important to remember about what you bring as a parent to here. That kind of bonding side of stuff can sometimes feel tricky. You may feel like there's a bit of a disconnect there, or we may feel this really intense love that then feels like really like fearful, like we don't feel like they're quite safe as well. Common triggers are things like, especially getting to that year mark, birthdays, which can also be like a trauma anniversary, or returning to work, or starting childcare can be tricky with that transition time as well. So knowing that there are periods of time that may be a little bit more triggering, uh, a little bit more hard for you, and being able to kind of just add some understanding and some padding around yourself at those times, some understanding is really, really important. We also see a strength. We also see that people want to give back. Their values change, their meaning changes, things become like laser focused in terms of what's important for them. And that can be a really, really big strength too. So, whilst yes, there is a lot of change, if we can kind of get curious about ourselves and we can kind of adapt to this new identity as a parent, especially going through what you've been through, being able to kind of go, what's important to me now? And leaning into that can be a really, really big area for growth. So I just want you to know that NICU is intense. I don't think that there's any hiding in that, and I can't sugarcoat it. But knowing what to expect does help. It's also really important to know that your neurodivergent needs are valid and they're important, and you deserve to have your needs met. Those four pillars, so the sensory, the communication, executive functioning, and the mental health, can hold you within that if you're thinking about your needs throughout all of those areas. Advocating for yourself and your baby is okay to do, and it supports both of you. It's important to know that you do bring a strength within that NICU too. You do have strengths that can kind of thrive within that situation too. I also want you to know that you can develop a strong and loving bond with your child. And I have met with countless parents who have a really strong and loving bond with their kids too. And I know that it looks different to what you expected or what you planned, but I want you to know that it's okay that you feel whatever it is about this experience too. So it doesn't end at the NICU, but there is a lot that can be done to help people while they're there and afterwards that can make a big difference too. Just a tiny bit about us before we kind of leave today and before I open up questions. So, like I said, we've got the NICU space, which is we've got a load of psychoeducation in there. We've got free resources for people who are in NICU now. We've got coping tools. We've got peer support. We've got that community element there. We've got loads there for people, which will help kind of like dip in and out while you're there. And then we've got Miracle Moon, which is kind of our umbrella company. I offer therapy one-to-one with other associates as well. We offer EMDR. We've got resources, we've got webinars, podcasts, social media, and lots of helpful stuff there that can help you as well. So there we go. So that's it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Frankie.
That's all
I'm
right.
going to just touch on a couple of things, but while I do, I want to open the floor for questions. So if anyone has a question while I'm waffling on a little bit, do type it in the chat, or if you feel like you're comfortable coming on camera and you're okay with being on a recording on camera, then you're very welcome to raise your hand as well. I just want to thank you so much, Frankie, because I think I'm there's so much in here, and every time we speak, I'm just floored by how important it is to be having this conversation, particularly antenatally. And even though, I've worked as a doula for over 5 years now, a lot of it is new to me. It's not something that we talk about in our antenatal education. We do in ours, I'm proud to say, thanks to you.
Mhm.
But it's not something that it's something almost people are, I suppose, protected from in some ways, but we do them a disservice in that people can be completely blindsided, as you've said, and at a time when, they're feeling potentially very vulnerable and, concerned about the health of their baby. All this is going on, and it's just so much to take in. And a lot of our workshop content is about looking after yourself in a clinical birth environment, because that's where the majority of people give birth. But that will always, the amount of time you're spending there will be much shorter compared to if your baby does end up staying in the neonatal unit for some time or perhaps a long time. And you'll be then exposed to all the things that might be challenging about those environments for so much longer. And I loved when you said, well, there were lots of things I loved, but when you said you highlighted the importance of your needs as a parent being met. And I think that's so key to highlight, because ultimately your baby in the neonatal unit will benefit from you being supported and looked after and your needs being met. I also loved that you validated all the emotions because there's almost every emotion you can think of involved. And not all of it, I suppose, feels negative sometimes. You spoke about actually some people perhaps feeling some comfort in the routine that often NICU parents find themselves in. But then that can almost bring a bit of shame, I think, if they are finding comfort in something that is related to their baby being on the neonatal unit. So it gets complex, and I think just validating all shades of it is so important. And yeah, thank you as well for stating that, you are the most important member of the team looking after your baby and for highlighting what we can do as parents if our babies are on the neonatal unit. So yes, thank you so much. I'm just going to check to see if the chat Katie, I need to make a quick, I'm not sure if that's a disclaimer before any parents talk. Is that
It's
correct?
just, yeah, it's just to say that I'm not a parent who's had any children on the NICU. I am neurodivergent, but I do work with the parents. So I
Yeah.
don't work for the NHS.
Okay.
I work for the LMNS. And I go and chat with the parents. I go and take feedback from them so we can like make their experiences better. So I wanted to say thank you very much for everything that you've shared with us and given me some really good points that I can take with me. But I'm now going to jump off the call. So if there is any parents who want to chat freely, they don't feel like I'm listening in on them or anything.
Thank you, Katie. That's really important. And thank you for sharing and for the wonderful work that you do. That's amazing. Thank
All
you.
right. Cheers. Thank you
Brilliant.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Bye.
Joe, my wonderful co-director, hello, Joe, has shared that that was phenomenal, amazing resources. Absolutely. Joe has a question. Do you know whether most healthcare professionals in NICUs across the UK are accepting of parents using the tools that you've highlighted? Or is there a variety of response from healthcare professionals to parents raising their own needs? Great question, Joe.
That this is something that is becoming more and more. So, family integrated care is something that is being established within most units, and there has been a real culture shift. Previously, maybe even like 6 years ago, kind of thing, it was very much that it would be the staff doing to the baby, and that is how it works. But now there is this massive movement in terms of making sure that it is integrated with the whole family. I think that there are more and more conversations, particularly over the last couple of years, about neurodivergence and
Mhm.
about kind of autism and ADHD. I feel like the conversation's just stepped up a notch. So
Yeah.
I think that generally people are more aware and more kind of open to it. They
Mhm.
should be.
Mhm.
I think that you will still get people within a system that are still human and that there may be some resistance to that, maybe stuck in their ways a little bit. Or maybe they're used to doing things in a certain kind of way, or they're busy, or they're overwhelmed, and they find that tricky.
Yeah.
However, it's becoming more and more kind of spoken about and more accepted, but you will always get the people who maybe struggle with that a little bit more as staff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we find that as well when we're talking about reasonable adjustments in maternity care and
Mm.
the importance of, yeah, looking after the family as a holistic family and not just focusing, for example, on the birthing person, and in this case, not just, you know, care for the baby, but for the family involved within the NICU space. Yeah, it is great news, and it's so important that the work of Miracle Moon is obviously, making a difference in terms of those conversations being had. I feel another awareness week coming on if there isn't one already from your perspective. Amazing. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions for Frankie at the moment? Some of us may be processing everything you've just shared, Frankie. So if we wanted to get in touch
Yeah.
with a question, I
Yeah.
presume that you would invite that via social media.
Please do. Yeah, absolutely. Do that on Instagram is probably the place that I am at most. But you can also email me. I'm hello@miraclemoon.co.uk. So please do feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to help if I can.
Thank you. And Pippa, you missed the start and have asked about the recording. Absolutely. So Frankie has very kindly said that we can keep the recording. We'll be uploading it to our new YouTube site. Everyone who signed up for this webinar will get a link to that. So you'll be able to watch that, and please share it as well with colleagues or any other parents who you think might benefit from this information. And it's also worth knowing that this information is part of our antenatal course, the ND birth prep course. So you can signpost people to that as well if you think they would benefit from this content and from that neurodivergent perspective of preparing for birth and the postnatal time. Mavis has shared that it's an excellent and informative session. Thank you so much. Mavis is a midwife and professional midwifery advocate supporting mothers to discuss their birth experience. And she wanted to know about, or would like to know about, support for mothers with language barriers, which is a really good question. Do you get a sense of support within the NICU for families whose first language isn't English, Frankie, and kind of the quality of that support, I guess?
Think it's really a bit of a postcode lottery,
Yeah,
which is sad and it shouldn't be like that. But it is definitely something that is being spoken about more.
yeah,
And it is something there should be support available as well. So I know that a lot of the materials on the ward, they're trying to kind of make sure that they're translated into as many languages as possible, using interpreters, all of that kind of stuff. But again, it just kind of depends on
yeah.
the unit that you're on and the support that they've got available.
And I imagine there's a sort of added layer of challenge with the neonatal unit in that, for many people, having an interpreter over the phone can bring
Mm,
difficulties because we've not got kind of we're missing the non-verbal cues, and it can be
yeah,
it can be kind of extra challenging to communicate that way. But also neonatal units are really limited, aren't they, in terms of how many people can come in at a time to be
yeah,
perhaps by a baby's incubator. So that will be quite difficult, I imagine, to
yeah,
navigate.
completely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for these questions. Just one last call for any questions. Otherwise, we will sign off. Really delighted that this was our first webinar of Neurodivergent Birth Awareness Week. And if you haven't yet had a chance to look at the rest of the program, then head to ndbirth.com. Everything is free, everything is recorded, and we'd love to share you to share it as far and wide as possible. Joe, you've got your hand up.
Just a last call. I wanted to thank Mavis for that fantastic question. So important to think about language, and that's also just made me think, Frankie, of a final question, and I'm hoping it's also good news. How are things now? And maybe it's a bit of a lottery for families that are not your sort of stereotypical straight cis het mum and dad family in the NICU. Do you find attitudes vary? Do you find there's more understanding and willingness to accept, a variety of different families where you've got co-parents, you may have co-nursing mothers? How's
Yeah.
that all working out?
Yeah, again, I feel like over the past couple of years, probably, I feel like that is the conversation is there more. So I know that at one of the most recent kind of ODN operational delivery network days, there was a big focus on that, and there was a big focus on generally, and I think that conversation is being had more. I think there's companies like Make Birth Better who are doing a really fantastic job at advocating for that and talking about that more so too. So I think that the conversation is shifting and it is changing. But again, with everything that I've said, I think it really does, it depends on the people who are within the units
Yeah,
as well. But I think that there is more conversation is being had out there, which is needed.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you so much. Okay. Joe has just said thank you, Frankie. Okay, so on that note, we'll leave it there and we will look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Do keep an eye on the Instagram. This afternoon, there's going to be a competition launched to celebrate Neurodivergent Birth Awareness Week. So if you're feeling lucky, then check that out today. And I wish you well with that. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye for now. Bye bye.